and we will get going here. Any questions before we start? Everybody okay? Excellent, good. Okay, so I'm going to come down to April 13th, download this zip file. And I am working on a PC in class today. If you're working on a Mac, the process for unzipping a zip file or a compressed file is a little bit different. If you have specific questions, feel free to stop me and I'm happy to help. But I have downloaded this zip file. It's gone into my downloads folder. It's right here. I'm actually going to move it to my desktop just because that's where I want to be working today. And on a PC, in order to unzip or uncompress a folder, we can double click on it and we can see what's inside, but those files aren't technically extracted and available for us to use yet. You'll see if you're looking at this on a PC that there's this Mac OS X folder. That's just because I created this zip folder on a Mac. But what I want to do is click extract, and I want to click extract all. This will ask me where I want to extract these these files, and I'm just going to put them on my desktop and click extract. So once I do that, now I have the original zip folder that I don't need anymore. I can throw that away, but I have this normal folder that's not zipped up, that's got 2 Word documents and 3 images in it. So has everybody successfully downloaded and extracted these files? We'll walk around and just make sure. Perfect. You good, Nathan?
I was just watching you doing it. Company.
Okay, perfect. Eric, have you got it there? Awesome. Good. The thumbs up on Zoom help me kind of keep track of where you are. So thank you for those. Perfect. Freddie, Violet, you both okay? Okay. All right. So let's open up the document that's called text. And when you do, you'll see that it's a very rough beginning document with some filler text in it. If you try to read these lines of text, you'll notice that they're English words, but it's all just gibberish. So no sense in trying to make sense of it. I have gone in and added some headers and some subheaders. This looks like maybe it's supposed to be some kind of bullet list. And so on. So this is the document that we're going to use to show, to demonstrate a couple of things. And just for the sake of kind of previewing what we're going to talk about today, we're going to create some paragraph styles. So we're going to be in the style pane of our Microsoft Word today. We're also going to set up this document into more of a 2-column layout so that we can make it look a little bit more interesting. And not just kind of dull like the existing document is. We'll give it a little bit more of a dynamic feel that way. So just by a show of hands, if you don't mind, how many of you have used paragraph styles in Microsoft Word before? Ooh, excellent, good. I'm not seeing many hands. I see some on Zoom here, but for the most part, this is going to be new to you. I'm excited about that. This is something, I'm not overstating this. This is something that really did change my life when I learned about this. So if you're like me, you're in for a real treat today. Okay, so let's start off by thinking about how we want our headers to look. This first line of text says header 1, and I want it to look different from the rest of this text. So I'm going to highlight it, and I'm going to show my home ribbon so that I can play with some fonts and different things like that. And I'm going to pick some fonts here. The one I was using in my office, I don't know if it'll be available on this computer, but we'll check. And it is not. So let's pick a font. Does anybody have a favorite font that they like to use for headers? I'm open to your suggestions here. If not, I've got some backups.
I use Futura a lot, but I don't think you have
Is that not on here either?
that.
FGH. Yeah, Futura is not there either. Okay, well, we're limited. Of course, you can obviously, download fonts onto your computer. You can do a lot of different things when it's your own machine. I'm not going to go through the trouble of that just for today. So I really like the Franklin Gothic family. So I'm going to select, let's go Franklin Gothic Heavy, just since this is a level 1 header. And if you don't have this specific font, that's okay. You can pick a different font, no problem. But I'm going to make it Franklin Gothic Heavy, and I'm going to make it bigger. I'm going to make it 22 points so that it really stands out from the rest of this text. Now, this is stuff that you've all done before. You've all changed fonts, you've changed font sizes. But if we go to our paragraph formatting menu, and on a PC, I can open that up just by clicking this little, I don't know, arrow that's in the bottom right corner of this paragraph grouping. If you're on a Mac, you can hit, I think it's Command Option M, and that will open the same menu. But it should look something like this. We should see some options that we can select: indentation, spacing, and line spacing. So I've set this to Franklin Gothic size, what did I say, 22. And I'm going to change the line spacing of this as well. Right now, the line spacing is set at single, and we're very familiar with single spacing and double spacing texts, but I'm going to use a different feature. I'm going to set this to exactly, and I'm going to change this to 25. So the line spacing should say exactly 25. We won't notice a visible difference here yet on our header, but if we had a header that extended over 2 lines, then we would see a difference. We'll come back to this concept of line spacing in just a minute, where it will make a difference, so you'll be able to see a little bit better what we're working with. Okay, the last thing I want to do to this header for now is to change it so that it's in all caps. So I'm going to open up my font options box here. If I click the little down arrow that's in the font grouping, that will open this up. On a Mac, I think if you hit Command D, like in dog, that will open up the same menu. And I'm just going to select all caps. There's a little button right here that I'm pointing to with my mouse that says all caps. So I'll hit OK, and that changes the text to all caps. Okay. There is one more thing I want to do. I'm sorry. I want to go back into my paragraph options and see how the spacing before and after is both set to auto. That was done by default. And a good rule of thumb is you probably don't really want Microsoft Word making decisions for you. Not always a great idea. So we're going to change this. I'm going to change the before to 0, and I'm going to change the after to 4 points. So if I'll just type a 4 in there. And I'm seeing in the chat, we've got some fans of Merriweather, Times New Roman, and Century Gothic. Very good. For the header, Zoe, try something besides Times New Roman. Try a sans serif font, whatever you like. Okay, we good so far? Give me a thumbs up in person or in Zoom if we're okay. Okay, good. All right. So now as I scroll through this document, I see that I have another header on page 2. It's called header 2. And I could go through, now that I've made these decisions of what font and what size and what spacing I like, I could go through and apply those all manually to this header as well. And honestly, with a document that only has 2 headers, that's not going to be too cumbersome. But I'm asking you to revise a document, this ACO manual, that has many, many headers. And it's going to get really tedious if you have to go through and reapply all of those fonts and sizes, et cetera, one by one. So we're going to create a paragraph style that encapsulates every decision we've made so that we can easily apply it to any other text that is the same type. So I'm gonna highlight this level 1 header, go to my home tab, and I have a whole big middle section that's called styles here. And I see that there's a bunch of preset styles. If I hover over them, you can see that it changes the look of that header. We've already decided how we want it to look. So I'm going to click this little down arrow that pops out my style panel. And I'm going to select this little button in the bottom left that when I hover over it, it says new style. I'm creating a new style here. Again, on a Mac, it's going to look different, but you'll have a button somewhere that says new style. So that opens up this little pane here. And I'm going to call this header. And you'll notice that I put an underscore before the word header. This is just my own personal naming convention that I've gotten used to, just so that I can keep the styles that I have created myself separate from those that are in this list by default in Microsoft Word. I don't want them getting, alphabetized and I have to scroll through. I only want to work with the styles that I've created. So I just name them with an underscore first, and then I give them a name. Now notice that we have, because I've clicked on that new style button with the header text selected, Microsoft Word knows that I want this style to include Franklin Gothic font at 22 points. It's going to be this bold setting. And if I look in these little specks down here where my mouse is pointing, I can see that everything that I've already applied has come into this style. So my line spacing is exactly 25 points. My space before is 0. My space after is 4 points. Everything I've already done is in there. So I don't have to make any other changes besides just giving this a name and clicking OK. Now, when I do that, I get in my style panel an option now that's underscore header, which is what I've just created. So now any other text that I want to look the same as what we've just designed for that header, I can just put my cursor in that paragraph or in that line, come over to my style panel and click the header, and it will apply all of that automatically. Not just the font, not just the spacing, not just the fact that it's in all caps. It packages all of that up and works really well. Jesse, I see your hand raised. Go ahead and unmute and please ask.
Yeah, just a quick question. So is it required that we do that whole header part first, or can we just, highlight and then do the changes through that style?
Yeah,
I saw the menus or options were in there already.
You're exactly right. Great question. So you can, not style the text first. You can create the style first, call it whatever you want. I'm not going to save this one, but I'm going to call it whatever. And then, yeah, you can come in and change the font, the size. Down here in this menu, you can open up this paragraph box, the same one that we looked at. You can change the spacing before and after, the line spacing, and so on. You can do all of that in here, and that's perfectly fine. I prefer to do it manually first, just so that I can see what it looks like as I'm applying each decision, as I'm changing the font, as I'm changing the size, and so on. So that's how I prefer to do it, but you're welcome to do it the way you described too.
The only thing is that before you not do it, you still want to sort of select the text that you're going to use as a header. But if you're well, I don't know, this is a lot of font work. If you do it after, I do it after too, because I'll make changes, and then there's an option to update the changes as you make changes to all of the headers. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does. And we'll actually see exactly what you're describing, Tanya, in just a minute. So I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, good. Other questions about this paragraph style that we've created called header? All right, very good. Let's create one then for our subhead. So I'm going to do it the same way I did before. I'm just going to highlight this text that's called subhead 1.1. I'm going to change the font for this one to we'll stick with our Franklin Gothic family here, but I don't want it to be as heavy as these first level headers. So maybe I'll go Franklin Gothic medium. And right now it's size 12. I'm going to bump that up just 1 point to size 13. And then I'm going to come into the paragraph settings. So again, on a Mac, Command Option M, as in Mary, will open that up for you. Or on a PC, you can just click this little down arrow in the paragraph grouping of the Home tab. I'm going to change my line spacing to exactly 15 this time. And I'm going to change the space before from auto. I'm going to say 0 for space before, and I'm going to say 2 for space after. And if you have questions, please stop me. But remember also that we're recording today, so you can go back and watch and get these whatever you might miss. Okay, so I'll hit OK. And now I have a paragraph style. Oh, did I name it? Oh, no, I haven't made the style yet. So now I have some text that's styled the way that I like it, but I need to apply or package all of those decisions into a paragraph style. So I'm going to click New Style in my Styles panel. And if yours is closed for some reason, I'll just demonstrate again how to open that up. In the Home tab, I have the Styles grouping here. I can click the little down arrow to open up this Styles pane. Click New Style. And I'll call this underscore subhead. Again, I like to start them with an underscore so that it groups all the styles that I create in my list. Okay, this looks good. Franklin Gothic medium, 13-point, 15-point line spacing, 0 points before, 2 points after. I like it. So I'm just going to click OK. And now I'm going to go through and apply that same paragraph style to every line that says subhead in this document. So I scroll down. I can see that there's one called Subhead 1.2. Put my cursor in that line and click the Subhead style. Subhead 1.3, I'm going to make it the Subhead. Subhead 2.1 and Subhead 2.2. And that's all of them. All right. So now we've come up with decisions for how we want our headers to look and our first level subheaders. Next thing we're going to do is determine what we want our actual text, our body text, our paragraphs to look like. So let's do something similar to what we did before. I'm just going to highlight this first paragraph of body text. I'm going to pick some fonts here, and I bet the font that I picked at my office is not in here. It is not. Oh, this is frustrating. That's okay. Let's go. Let's see. Let's do, Parker, I see you like Century Gothic. Let's go ahead and do Century Schoolbook for this one. Century Gothic, I can see is a sans serif font. When I hover over it, you can see that the text in this paragraph shows me what it would look like if I selected that font. Century Schoolbook is a nice readable font, suitable for long pieces of text. And a good tip for you is if the word book appears in a font name, most likely it was designed so that it was designed to be read, it was designed for large chunks of text to be readable. So let's go Century Schoolbook. I like that. I'm going to change the font size to 11. And I'm going to open up my font styling options. Again, Command D, like in dog, if you're on a Mac, or the little down arrow if you're on a PC. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I want to go to the paragraph, my mistake. The paragraph formatting options again. Change the line spacing for this one to 14 points. And then I'm going to hit 0 space before and 0 space after. So stick with me for a minute. This will look a little bit weird, but you'll see what we're going to do in just a moment. Everybody good so far? All right. So we hit OK. This is what my paragraphs are going to look like. And now I'm just going to go through, and you got to be kind of careful here because you don't want to apply this paragraph style to the subheads that you've already applied a style to. Oh, I keep forgetting. Jesse, maybe I should do it the way you do because I keep forgetting to make the style, the paragraph style itself. Okay, so let's make the paragraph style first to package up these decisions. So with my cursor in the paragraph that I've already changed the font, made all these decisions to, I'm going to click the new style button, and I'm going to call this one underscore body text. I can see down here, it brings in all these decisions that I've made. So I'll hit OK. And now I can go through and apply this paragraph style to the other paragraphs of text. So I'm just going to highlight everything until I get to subhead 1.2. Apply my body text paragraph style. Everything between 1.2 and 1.3 applied. Everything before header 2. There's this little paragraph between header 2 and subhead 2.1. Apply it there, and so on. So once you have all of your body text applied, will you raise your hand or give me a thumbs up? Good, good, good. Perfect, good. That's okay. So, okay, no. Good. You want me where? Yeah, good. Perfect. We're also recording this today, so if you go back. Okay, anybody on Zoom having trouble or need assistance? All right. Okay, we'll keep going then. So Tanya, you brought up a point earlier about how if we set up our styles, you know, the way that we've been doing them, and then we want to go back and make some changes to them, we can do that really easily. So right now, I have all the text styled in this document, but it looks terrible. I can't really tell where new paragraphs begin, other than, you know, the fact that there's these kind of empty lines. It's not very usable the way it is now. So what I want to do is add some space after each of these body text paragraphs. So if I click in this paragraph that comes right after subhead 1.1, really you could be clicked into any paragraph that's styled with the body text style. I'm going to open up my paragraph options again, and I'm just going to play around with some different values for the space after. So I'm going to start with 10, click OK, and see what I think. Now notice when I did that, it puts this space after this one paragraph. Can you see as I toggle it back and forth? The space after this paragraph is exactly 10 points. So if I'm happy with that, which in this case I am, now I can go up to my paragraph style that's called body text, click this little down arrow here, and click update body text to match selection. Now watch what happens when I do that. Now it changes that paragraph style and it applies the change. In this case, it was a space after of 10 points to every paragraph that has that paragraph style applied to it. So if I make a change, if I change my mind again, if I say, you know what, I'm not really happy with 10 points, I want to bump that up a little bit, I only have to do that one time rather than go through and make that change for each paragraph in this document, which would be a nightmare. So critical to use paragraph styles like this when you're working on a design heavy manual like you are for this third major assignment. Yeah, just it. Yeah, of course, you bet. Okay, so when we want to make these kinds of changes, and this applies to any change you want to make, you need to be sure that your cursor is in a paragraph that has the paragraph style applied to it that you want to change. So my cursor is in a body text paragraph right now. I want to apply some space after, so I'm going to open up the paragraph settings, and I'm going to make the space after here 10 points. I'll click OK, and that applies that change to just this one paragraph that I'm in. But if I want to apply that change throughout the whole document, I can come over to my paragraph style, click the down arrow, and select Update Body Text to match selection. Whatever changes I made in this one paragraph that my cursor is in will now be applied to every body text paragraph in this whole document.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, last paragraph style we're going to make. We have some kind of list here. Let's call it a bullet list. It doesn't look great right now. Doesn't have any bullets, and there's quite a bit of space after each of these items. So I'm going to click on one of these lines, apply a bullet to it. Oops, what's going on here? Okay, so that's what I want each of these to look like. I'm going to create a new paragraph style, call it bullet list, and then I'll click OK. And now I'll select the rest of the text here, apply this bullet list paragraph style, and I have the bullets on each of those lines. Now, on Monday, we talked about how Microsoft Word has a lot of powerful document design features, but it is not nearly as sophisticated as other software that's out there. And if you've used other software like InDesign, you might find some of Word's features frustrating. One thing that Microsoft Word has that I think is super handy, though, that I really love, is an option I'm going to show you right now. I don't want to have all this space between the items in my bullet lists. I want every item in the bullet list to be close together, but I do want to have some space after the last item in the bullet list so that it's clearly distinct from the next paragraph that comes after it. So what I'm going to do is open up my bullet list paragraph style options, and if I click on the little downward arrow that pops up when I hover over the bullet list paragraph style, I'm going to select modify. That opens up these style features again and lets me make some changes. And what I can do is, let's see. Uh-oh, this is not where I thought it would be. Here we go. Okay, so what I can do is go to the format dropdown button, click on the paragraph option. This opens up this pane that we've seen many times. And notice that it gives me 10 points of space after each paragraph in this style. But I have this really handy little option down here that says don't add space between paragraphs of the same style. This is super handy, and I wish other more sophisticated layout software had the same thing. If I click OK, and click OK again, now it brings all of my bullets together, but it still gives me or keeps the space after this last bullet. I really love that feature. I think it's very convenient. Last thing I want to say about this bullet list paragraph style that we just created, if I open up the options again by clicking on modify, this is important. This will trip you up if you are new to paragraph styles. Notice that right here, where my mouse is pointing, it says the style is based on body text. That means that if I make any changes to the body text paragraph style, those are going to get carried over and be applied to my bullet list paragraph style as well. So if later on I decide, you know what, I really don't like this Century book, whatever font that we picked, I'm going to change it. And I go into the paragraph style for body text, and I change the font to something else, just say Calibri for now, it changes the text in the bullet list paragraph style, even though this is a separate paragraph style. It does that because I've made it so that bullet list is a child of the body text paragraph style. Any guesses as to how that happened? How did Microsoft Word know to base the bullet list style off of the body text style? What do you think? Yeah, perfect. Good. Erica said because we applied that style first. Zoe says they all have the P symbol on the list. Yeah, that's a good observation, Zoe. So all of these that we've created have this little pilcrow, this backwards P. That just indicates that we're working with paragraph styles instead of character styles, which we're not going to talk about today, unfortunately. But critical to observe. Erica, you're right, though. When we first applied our body text paragraph style, we applied it to all of this text, right? And then when I went in and made some changes and created a new style, Microsoft Word knew that I had already applied a different style to it. And so it brought that in and said, okay, I guess you want to base this style off of the other one. But if you're not careful and doing this consciously, then you're probably going to run into some issues if you change your mind a lot throughout this process. Okay, I am happy with the paragraph styles that we've made so far. Any questions before we move on to more document level design features that we're going to use?
For me, I'm on a Mac, and the changes that you made to the bullet list, it left the spacing on the first one.
Okay, so what you might need to do, Jesse, is just if you check and see which paragraph style is applied here to that first bullet list, just highlight it and click the bullet list paragraph style again, and hopefully that'll fix it. Give it a try and let me know.
Oh, that worked.
Awesome, good.
Okay, thanks.
Perfect, good. Any other questions? Okay, cool. So we're done with styles for now. We've got a good little setup here. Any text that we add, we can do a lot with this without having to go through and make all these decisions again. These decisions have been made for us. I mentioned at the beginning of class, though, that I wanted to make this document have not just a one column design like we see here, but a two column design to make it look a little bit more dynamic. Another thing that the two column design can do for us is it breaks up the text a little bit nicer. So right now, even though I like how these fonts look together and I think it's okay, I still look at this and I think this is just a lot of text. And honestly, if I were to open this up, I wouldn't be too excited to read this document. So I want to put more white space in this document without, putting additional space after my paragraphs or between my lines of text. So what I'm going to do is go to the layout ribbon in Microsoft Word. I'm going to go to margins. And instead of just leaving it at the default normal margins where I have an inch on the top, left, bottom, and right, I'm going to go to custom margins, and I'm going to make some decisions myself. In this case, I'm going to give myself a giant left margin. I'm going to say 2.5 inches. I'll leave the other margins all the same, but I'll click OK. And honestly, right now, I think this looks a lot more readable. These line lengths, in other words, the length of each line, are shorter. So somebody's eye is going to move across these lines a little bit easier. There's this nice area of white space off to the side that I think is inviting. It's not intimidating like just big, huge blocks of text are. So this is a big improvement already. And now this gives me the option to have a two-column format. So I'm looking at this document and I'm thinking that I have this white column off to the left that's pretty narrow. And then I have this column of text over here off to the right. In my design, I want to use this first narrow white column for things like pictures, call outs, information that, you know, I really want to make sure that my reader sees. So what we're going to do is insert a text box. We're going to insert some images, and then we're going to look at some specifics about how to wrap the text around those images. And we're also going to keep track of the size and the placement of our images, because we know that doing this kind of stuff, things could get messy pretty quickly. So the first thing we're going to do is insert a text box somewhere within this left margin. So I'm going to click the Insert tab and open up the Insert ribbon. And off to the right, I see that I have an image to insert a text box. So I will click on that. I'm just going to choose a simple text box for this one. And it sticks it in my document. Yours may have gotten stuck in a different place of the document. Mine came right in the middle, I think, because that's probably where my cursor was. I wasn't paying attention. So Word thought that I wanted my text box to be right there. I can just grab this text box though and move it around anywhere I want in the document. So I'm going to move it off to the left-hand margin, and I'm going to move it down to this paragraph that starts with created give. It's the second one under subhead 1.1, kind of by the bullet list. I want to mention a couple important things here that you'll notice. You see this little anchor symbol next to this text box? Microsoft Word automatically anchors objects like text boxes and images to parts of the text. So I move this around, and as I do, you can see that that anchor point moves to different paragraphs. It only ever shows up at the beginning of paragraphs in this document. And what that does, it's actually a nice little feature, is it means that if I had to make major changes to this text, let's say I deleted a whole paragraph up here, this text box stays next to the text that I want it to stay next to. So if you're going to be using text boxes, let's say, to define key terms, and we have a key term in this paragraph that's maybe bolded or underlined or whatever, and this text box defines this term, because it's anchored to this paragraph, even if you add text or create more space or you make changes above this part of the text, that text box is going to stay next to that paragraph. So that's really nice. You don't have to keep track once you have them placed. So let's delete the text that it gives me. And let's say that I want to use text boxes for what I think are just kind of interesting or very noteworthy facts. So I'm going to say, did you know ocelots can still be found in Texas? Okay. Honestly, we're just still thinking about just the design, not necessarily the content. I can go back through and make some paragraph styles for the text in these text boxes. And in fact, I would do that if I was actually, doing this whole design. Maybe we'll italicize this, make it smaller, whatever. We'll make some design decisions there. I can come into this little tab that shows up that's called Format once I have my text box selected, and I can fill it with a different color so that it stands out even more. I can take this outline away and just make it so that it looks a little bit nicer. Last thing I want to mention here is you should, let's see. If you're on a Mac, or maybe if you're on your PC, when you move this text box around, you get a little like box that pops up that gives you some numbers, like dimensions, like how far away it is from the left versus how far away it is from the right. This popped up for me. but it is not popping up here. So just give me 1 second. If you do what?
Are you talking about how it will show this right here?
Drag that text box around. And just drag it in. You can see. Yeah,
And
see
why
that,
don't you put your computers
that little, the little black box that says
Oh.
left and right, that's what I'm looking for.
Oh,
But it's not showing up here. Freddie, do you mind if I look at yours since you're on a PC? If you have like if you insert a text box? Oh, and Google Docs will be
Yeah,
very
it's not,
different.
it's
right?
weird, yeah, I'm trying to like kind of go along, so.
Oh, and this is a Chromebook, is that right?
Yeah, it's like.
That makes sense. Okay, yeah. Eric, nice to meet you.
I'm in the stand up, I'm also using a Chromebook and it's not online Word, so.
Ah, gotcha. Okay, so things are different for you then too.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, this is a good place to pause and say, if you don't have the downloaded like application of Microsoft Word, if you're using the online version or if you're using Google Docs, not all of these features are going to be available. So my recommendation would be, if you are using a device that doesn't have the capability to get Microsoft Word downloaded on it, I would suggest making sure that you use these lab computers here. It's going to be really difficult and just glitchy to use the online version of Microsoft Word or Google Docs to try to do some of this more technical stuff. So if you have a computer though, and you don't have Microsoft Office, you can download it for free through UNT's website. You can just Google UNT Microsoft Office, and everybody who's a student can download it for free. So
Yeah, that's what I said.
yeah, if you have questions about it though, let me know. I'm happy to discuss any specifics. Okay, well, I'll have to troubleshoot this on a PC a little bit more. I wanted to point out that when we insert a bunch of text boxes, if I had 2 of these, for example, I'm just going to copy and paste this one. One of the things that'll make your document look really just untidy is if these elements are not aligned together. So if I had 2 text boxes next to each other and they looked like this, my eye has been trained to really quickly pick up on the fact that these do not align on the left. This is where Microsoft Word really doesn't do us any favors. Other software features make it really easy to align stuff like this. But with Word, you can do one of 2 things. And this is where I need to troubleshoot. Word will tell you exactly how far away you are from the left margin of the page, so that you can make sure that this box is exactly as far away from the left margin as this second box here. But what you can also do is go up to the Format tab when you have one of these boxes selected and click on Position right here where my mouse is pointed. Click More Layout Options. And this will allow you to position the object. In this case, it's a text box, wherever you want it. So right here, you can see that my absolute position is negative 2.23 inches to the right of the margin, and it's 0.73 inches below a paragraph. The main one I'm interested here is this horizontal positioning. So negative 2.23 inches to the right. If I checked this one, let's see how well I did lining it up just by eyeballing it. Oh, it's close, but it's barely off. I want this to be negative 2.23. And that will move this so that it's exactly aligned on the left with this other text box. I do expect you to go in and check these things. Your document will look very unprofessional very quickly if you have slight misalignments in some of these kinds of elements here. Okay, questions about the text boxes or anchoring or positioning? All right. let's do our last thing then and insert some images. So I've put a bunch of images here, and I'm gonna put an image in just on the first page. First of all, I have my cursor on this paragraph that says open very fish abundantly. I'm gonna go to insert pictures. And I saved these on my desktop in this Word tutorial folder. I'm gonna put this picture of this ocelot in the document. Now, you can see what happens when I try to do this. And this is frustrating for a lot of people because it looks like this image is not usable, right? I mean, it only shows the little last bit of it. If I try to drag it around, it doesn't drag around as easily as these text boxes did. What I need to do is change the positioning of this image. So just like I did with the text box, I can go up to the format menu, select position, and then more layout options. Or no, I'm sorry, what am I doing? I want to change the text wrap here. So I'll go up to format, text wrap, and instead of having it default to inline with text, I'm going to select this option that says square. Now, when I do that, now I can see this whole image, and I should be able to drag it around like I could those text boxes. I can bring it into the margin. I can move it wherever I want it to go. So this is much better. Let's say this is a really cool image. It's big. And if I were to resize it all the way down so that it would fit in the left margin, maybe I'm unhappy with that. Maybe that's too small for me. So I want this to come into the text a little bit. And I want it to do it in a way that makes it obvious that it was intentional. What I mean by that is if I brought this into the text just like this much, this looks bad. This makes it look like I just made a mistake and didn't notice that the picture was coming into the text. But if I make it intentional, if I really make this contrast with the size of these text boxes up here, now it looks intentional, like I wanted this text to be bigger. I still want this image though to align on the left with these text boxes, so I have some good alignment here. So I'm gonna have the image selected, go up to format, position, more layout options. And does anybody remember the number that I need? -2.23, very good. That moves that image so that it's exactly aligned on the left with these text boxes up here. So this is starting to look pretty good to me. This is starting to look like an actual technical document that somebody spent a little bit of time designing. If I wanted to create more space, more white space around this image, I can adjust the amount of white space that shows up by selecting the image, going to format, text wrap. And if I select more layout options, at the bottom here, it gives me some values that I can put in for the text wrap options. I'm going to say I want to have 1/4 inch of white space around every part of this image. And that pushes the text further away from the image and kind of opens it up a little bit more so that there's more room to breathe here. Now notice when I did that, in my case, it moved some things. The document looks weird now because I have this one bullet list that's pushed over and I have a subhead at the bottom of a page. So if I was getting close to being done with my document, I'd want to look for this kind of stuff and just move this image down a little bit until that last bullet comes over. And then maybe I'd want to insert a page break before this last, or before this subhead that's at the end of the page so that it gets pushed down and is next to the paragraph that it goes with. I might also want to just resize this picture so that it looks different. Maybe now I have 2 lines of text below or whatever. You can play around with this and make some decisions based on what you like. But the key things that I want to mention here are that we're using white space really well. We've got a lot of nice white space in this document. We're breaking it up with some color, with some images. We're being careful to align these extra pieces that we've added so that it looks tidy. We're using paragraph styles so that we can efficiently make changes to this document. And I think it's looking good, really looking very good so far. Okay. I think that's all I've got. What questions do you have? This is just one option I need to mention. I'm not prescribing that yours look like this, but hopefully this gives you an idea of, features in Word that you can play around with to make your document look much more dynamic. So I'm going to stop recording. I hope this has been helpful.